Jon Snow was many things: bastard, commander, king, but above all else, he was a man of honor. That was the one thing no one could take from him, until the day he made the choice that shattered everything. It all began at the frozen lake beyond, the Wall. Jon had led a suicide squad north to capture a white and prove the threat of the dead to Queen Cersei. But things had gone terribly wrong. Surrounded by thousands of the Night King's army, the ice cracking under their feet, the men of the north had resigned themselves to die. Then Daenerys came, fire breathing from the skies, dragons roaring, a savior above the snowstorm. But it wasn't enough. The Night King had struck down Viserion with a spear of ice, and Jon had been left behind during the escape. As the others fled on Drogon's back, Jon fought alone, buried beneath the ice and weight of the dead. And then it happened. The Night King didn't kill him. Jon came to, gasping, wet and half-frozen, surrounded by white silence. But there were no more attacks. No undead leapt at him. The whites moved aside. The Night King walked forward, and for the first time, he didn't raise his arms in attack. He spoke, not in words, not like men do. It was something colder than language, an echo in Jon's mind, a voice like winter itself. "You are not like them." Jon stared in disbelief. He should have attacked. He should have drawn Longclaw. But he didn't. Because deep down, something had cracked. He had lost too much: his brothers of the Watch, Ygritte, his own identity. He had died and come back. And now he had just watched Viserion fall, his men almost die, and his supposed queen, Daenerys, leave him behind to perish. Something broke, and the Night King saw it. The living betray. The dead remember. You fight for those who will never love you. Join me. Jon didn't answer. Not then. He stumbled away, somehow found Benjen Stark, who gave his life to help Jon return to the Wall. But something in him had changed. He didn't tell anyone the truth of that moment. He lied. He said he was unconscious, that the Night King never approached him. But every night he saw the frozen blue eyes in his dreams, heard that voice whisper in the silence. The seed had been planted. Back at Dragonstone, Daenerys grieved over Viserion. She and Jon grew closer. The world around them edged toward war, but Jon kept thinking, why had the Night King spared him? What did it mean? Was it mercy or a message? And more importantly, why was part of him tempted? He had fought all his life for the living, and they had cast him aside. Catelyn had hated him. His Watch brothers had murdered him. His truth as a Targaryen had made him a threat to Daenerys. No one wanted Jon Snow. No one ever had. Except, maybe, the dead. It wasn't loyalty that burned in him now. It was exhaustion and curiosity. Weeks passed. The Night King didn't attack. Viserion was reborn with blue fire. But Jon kept his secret. Then came the truth bomb. Jon's parentage. Aegon Targaryen, the rightful heir. And Daenerys began to change. Fear seeped into her love. Tyrion eyed him like a rival. Varys whispered behind his back, Jon had never wanted the crown. But now, even not wanting, it wasn't enough. He saw it in their eyes. They'd never trust him again. So, when he returned north, he made a decision. Alone one night beneath the weirwood tree, he called out, to the gods, to the dead. He didn't know what he was doing, only that he needed answers, and the Night King came. Not in body, but in vision, in dream, in feeling. You have seen the truth. The living will never follow you. They will use you, fear you, then throw you away. Jon didn't argue. What do you want from me? He asked, and the answer came cold and simple. Peace, not war. End the living, end the burning. Let winter rule forever. You were born from ice and fire. Choose ice. He woke up shivering. His sword was frozen over. his breath fogged in his. Chambers, he had made no deal, but he didn't say no either. That was the beginning. Jon Snow returned to Winterfell a changed man. On the outside, he was still the king in the north, the loyal Stark, the war hero, and the Targaryen heir who had bent the knee to Daenerys. But inside, a silent war raged. Every step he took down, those stone corridors felt heavier. He looked at Sansa, Arya, even Tyrion differently now. Not with distrust exactly, but distance. They talked about strategies, alliances, how to win the war. But none of them understood the war Jon had already lost, inside his own soul. Because the Night King wasn't just a threat anymore. He was a voice, a presence, like a shadow that followed Jon wherever he went. Not haunting, not threatening, but patient. And that was the most terrifying part. Daenerys grew colder by the day. She masked it with fire and speeches, but Jon could feel it. She had seen him as an ally. Now he was a rival. Every time someone called him Your Grace instead of her, he saw that flicker in her eyes. Fear dressed as anger. They were planning to march on King's Landing, but winter was pressing in. Supplies were low, morale was lower, and then came the whisper that changed everything. Bran saw it first. The Night King was not heading south. He was waiting. Jon knew why. He was being given time to decide. That night, Jon stood on the battlements alone, watching the snow fall like ash. He thought of everything he'd fought for, the Watch, the North, the realm of men. But those memories didn't warm him anymore. They felt like a book he'd read long ago, familiar but distant. The next day, a raven arrived. Eastwatch had fallen. No one survived, no bodies found, no screams. Just silence. Jon knew what it meant. The Night King was sending him a message. He's showing me mercy. He's waiting. For me. But mercy from a monster was still mercy, and that made Jon wonder, who's the real monster now? The one offering peace, or the ones burning cities in the name of justice? Then something else happened. Arya confronted him. She had seen it in his eyes. The distance, the hesitation. She said, "You're not the same, Jon." He couldn't lie. To her. Not completely, so he gave her part of the truth. "I'm tired, Arya. Tired of watching everyone I love die. Tired of choosing the right side and losing anyway." But Arya, as always, saw through it. "You're scared of what you're becoming." Jon didn't answer, because she was right. A few nights later, Jon slipped out of Winterfell alone. He rode through the forest, back to the wall, not to lead. Not to fight, but to meet. He didn't tell anyone. He crossed into the haunted forest where he had once bled, cried, and fought. But now he walked as if the land remembered him. The snow didn't bite. The cold didn't sting. And soon he saw him, the Night King, waiting like he'd always known Jon would return. This time, Jon didn't raise his sword. He stood across from the ancient being of frost and death, and spoke. "I want to know what you really want." And the Night King smiled, or something close to it. No words were needed this time. Viserion landed beside them, undead, terrifying, majestic. The Night King placed a single finger to the ground, and suddenly the ice shifted, forming images, burning cities, kings and queens screaming, betrayal after betrayal. The Mad King, Robert's rebellion, the Red Wedding, Daenerys' future fire, all of them, humans. They always burn. They always fall. End the cycle. Join the stillness. And then Jon saw it, a vision, a world without fire. No more war, no more betrayals, just winter, eternal, cold, quiet. And in that silence, peace. Jon fell to his knees. not in surrender, but in understanding. Maybe this was why he had come back from death, not to lead the living, but to lead them into death, merciful, clean, cold death. Looked up. "What do I have to do?" The Night King turned, and in that moment, Jon Snow, the man, the hero, the king, began to fade. What remained was something else, something in between. Not dead, not alive, a bridge between worlds, a traitor to one, a savior to the other. Jon returned to Winterfell under moonless skies. His horse was half dead, his cloak soaked in snow, but his eyes were different, colder, emptier, like the man inside had been replaced. No one asked where he'd gone, not openly, but whispers traveled fast in Winterfell, and Arya had been watching him. Sansa, too. She felt it first, not as a sister, but as a ruler. The Jon who once knelt humbly beside her in the great hall now walked like a stranger, one with purpose, but no warmth. He smiled less, spoke less. And when he looked at Daenerys, it wasn't love anymore. It was calculation. Daenerys, to her credit, didn't notice at first. She was too focused on preparing for the war. Her anger toward Cersei had begun to rot her judgment. Every night she paced the halls, muttering of dragons and destiny, her grief over Viserion twisting into rage. She wanted fire. Jon said nothing. He attended the war councils, gave hollow nods, offered tired strategies. But, in truth, his mind was elsewhere. The Night King had given him a task: weaken them from within, break their unity, distract them long enough for the long night to rise. Jon didn't kill. Not yet. That wasn't the plan. His betrayal had to be quiet, surgical, a dagger in the dark, not a sword in the sun. He started by planting doubt. In a closed meeting with Tyrion, he spoke of Daenerys's growing instability. "She's not listening anymore," Jon said, eyes low. "She's blinded by vengeance." Tyrion, already worried, took the bait. He brought it to Varys. Varys began whispering to the northern lords. The cracks widened. Sansa, sharp as ever, noticed the tension and confronted Jon directly. "You're feeding their doubts," she accused. "I'm speaking the truth," Jon replied calmly. "You're turning them against her. She's turning them against herself." That shut Sansa up, for the moment. But Arya wasn't so easily convinced. She followed him at night, not just out of suspicion, but fear. Jon had always been the anchor, the one who did the right thing when no one else would. But now, she saw him walking in silence along the ramparts, staring into the woods like something was calling to him. One night, she followed him beyond the walls, and what she saw chilled her to the bone. Jon was standing in the clearing, alone. But not alone. The cold air shimmered, and a pale white owl perched nearby, unnaturally still, eyes glowing faint blue. Arya knew magic when she saw it, and she knew then Jon wasn't just hiding something. He was being watched. When she confronted him, he denied everything. "You're paranoid, Arya." "No, you're different. You're lying to all of us." He stepped forward, too close, his voice low, too calm. "I've seen the truth beyond the wall. I've seen what we're fighting. You wouldn't understand." "You mean who you're fighting for?" she whispered. Jon's jaw clenched. That was the first time someone had come close to saying it. "I'm still on your side." But even Arya didn't believe that. Meanwhile, Daenerys was unraveling. The tension with the North, the coldness from Jon, the constant fear of betrayal, it all began to eat her alive. She started making erratic decisions, burning small groups of deserters, questioning Sansa's loyalty, punishing those who questioned her. The people began to fear her more than follow her, and Jon fed the flames. With subtle words, careful suggestions, he drove the wedge deeper. To the Night King, this was victory. The living were fighting themselves, and no one knew that the man leading them had already switched sides. But Jon wasn't completely gone. Late at night, he still walked the crypts. He sat before Lyanna's statue, whispering apologies. He touched Ned's name and asked for forgiveness. "I don't know who I am anymore," he murmured. "I just want it all to end." He wasn't lying. The Night King had promised him peace. But Jon didn't yet understand what that peace would cost. The first signs came with the snowstorms. Unnatural, heavy, endless. Ravens stopped arriving. Scouts went missing. The air itself seemed to groan. The north was being swallowed. Bran felt it, too. But when he tried to warn the council, no one listened. Daenerys dismissed it as weather. Sansa saw it as superstition. Only Arya took it seriously. She went to Jon one last time. "We have to prepare. Something is coming." Jon didn't answer at first. Then he looked at her, eyes sharp but tired. Maybe it's already here. She stared at him, trying to find the brother she once knew. "Don't make me choose between you and the living, Jon." He didn't flinch. Then pray the living deserved to win. Winterfell's sky had never looked so dead. The stars were gone. The moon was a smudge. Snow didn't fall. It poured like the sky was bleeding frost. It had no sound, no pause, just a relentless flood of white, and in that silence came fear. Bran was the first to say it out loud. "He's here." No one believed it, yet. Daenerys still clung to the idea that the Night King would march south first, crush Cersei, and leave the north to her. She believed. Fire was the answer to everything. She had no idea the fire had already gone out inside her closest ally. Jon stood beside her on the walls, staring out at the endless dark trees. His face showed nothing, but his heart. It wasn't beating the same anymore. He could feel them, moving, watching, crawling closer every night. The dead didn't march this time. They surrounded. The army of the Night King wasn't coming in waves like it had before. This time it spread like rot, quiet, patient, impossible to see until it was already too late. Scouts disappeared. Food spoiled. The ravens stopped flying, and worst of all, people began to freeze from the inside. Maesters couldn't explain it. At first, it was a few villagers, eyes clouded with ice, blood turned to slush. Then it hit soldiers, guards on the wall, waking up dead. Some didn't even wake up at all. They just stopped living. No wounds, no screams. Just stillness. Arya was first to connect the dots. This isn't just winter. This is a curse. Someone let him in. Sansa refused to believe it. Tyrion was too afraid to. But Bran knew. He rolled into the hall with his hollow voice and declared, "Jon brought him here." Silence. Cold, heavy silence. Jon didn't deny it. He just looked at Bran, face unreadable, and asked, "Can you see what I've seen?" Bran stared into him. Something flickered behind his eyes. Shock, sadness, maybe even pity. Then, for the first time, he said nothing. Daenerys snapped. She turned to Jon in rage. "What have you done?" And Jon answered with the truth. Not shouted, not proud, just painfully calm. "I gave him a choice. Let us die in fire and chaos, or bring stillness." "Peace? You mean death," she growled. "I mean mercy," Jon whispered. She tried to arrest him. Arya drew her blade. Chaos erupted in the great hall. But Jon was already walking out. No one stopped him. That night the cold deepened, and the army came. But not like before. They didn't scream or charge. They simply appeared, all around Winterfell, silent, waiting, a wall of frost. The Night King didn't ride in on Viserion this time. He didn't raise his arms or summon thunder. He stood, watching, waiting. because Jon hadn't made his final move yet. Inside Winterfell, panic set in. Daenerys mounted Drogon, preparing to burn through the lines, but something stopped her. Drogon refused to fly. He groaned, wings stiff, not scared, just cold. His blood, his fire, it was weakening. The Night King was draining him. And then, the wall broke, not the outer wall, the wall within. Jon opened the gates, not with force, with silence. The guards didn't stop him. They were already turning, freezing. He walked alone into the snow and stood beside the Night King. Winterfell watched in horror as their hero became their doom. Arya screamed. Sansa collapsed. Daenerys wept, but her tears froze before they touched her cheek. Jon didn't raise a sword. He didn't speak. He just looked back once, and the gates opened wide. The dead entered like shadows. No battle, no siege, just quiet conquest. The living tried to fight. Arya moved like death, blades spinning, but the cold made her slower. Gendry was the first to fall. Tyrion vanished into the smoke. Sansa fled with a handful of Northmen toward the crypts, but it wasn't a fight anymore. It was a massacre painted in snow. Bran sat in his chair, unmoving. "This was always meant to happen," he said. Jon approached him. They looked at each other, two boys who had become something else. "You could have stopped this," Jon said. "I couldn't. I saw it, but I never had a choice." "You did," Jon knelt beside him, and for a moment, he almost cried, but the tears froze, and then Bran's eyes rolled back, and didn't come back. The three-eyed raven was gone. Winterfell had fallen, not with fire, nor with screams, but with silence. A silence so complete it felt like the gods had turned their backs. Snow buried the walls, the banners, the bodies. Only the pale blue eyes of the dead flickered through. The white Daenerys Targaryen stood alone at the top of the broken tower. Drogon, once the fury of fire, now lay half-frozen at her feet, alive but weakening. His flame sputtered like a dying candle. Every breath he took was heavier than the last. Below her, the dead marched through her new kingdom, and Jon Snow, the man she had loved, stood beside the Night King like a loyal son. She couldn't understand it. Not completely. She had trusted him, given him her heart, her war, her crown, and now he had betrayed her not for power, but for peace? But what kind of peace left the world dead? She clenched her fists, her blood too warm to surrender. If she was going to die, it wouldn't be like this. Not weeping, not begging, not frozen. She would burn. One last time. She mounted Drogon. He stirred weakly, rising with trembling wings. The Night King saw her. Jon saw her. Their army didn't move, and then Daenerys screamed into the wind. "Dracarys!" Drogon opened his mouth. Fire spilled out like rage unleashed. It hit the Night King directly. The snow turned to steam. The sky glowed red. And for a second, she thought she had done it. But when the smoke cleared, he still stood, unburnt, unmoving, and Jon, next to him, didn't flinch. Not even a blink. That's when she knew. She had lost him forever. The Night King raised a single hand, and Viserion came, crashing down from the storm clouds. Blue fire roared from the undead dragon's throat, and Drogon fell from the sky, his wings shredded by frost and flame. Daenerys was thrown from his back, crashing through the stone courtyard of her own house. She lay broken, bleeding, not dead, but close. Footsteps echoed. Jon stood over her now. No sword, no warmth, just eyes like ice and a voice that cut deeper than Valyrian steel. "You were never the queen. You were the fire that would consume everything." She looked up at him, whispering, "You said you loved me." Jon knelt beside her. and for the briefest second something returned to his face. Regret, maybe even love. "I did," he said. "But I've buried everyone I ever loved. I couldn't bury the world for you." He stood, turned away, and left her in the snow. But far below the ruins, in the cold tunnels of the crypts, a different battle was being planned. Arya Stark had survived. So had Sansa, Davos, and a handful of Northerners too stubborn to die. They knew they couldn't win. But maybe they could end it. Arya's voice was steady, even in the cold. "If Jon is truly gone, then there's only one way to stop this." Davos looked at her, grief in his eyes. "You mean kill him?" Sansa closed her eyes. "He made his choice." "But he's still our brother," Davos said. "No," Arya whispered. "He's something else now. They had one chance. Bran had told Arya long ago, the Night King's power flows through the one he marks. And Jon had been marked the moment he knelt in the snow. Kill Jon. And maybe the chain breaks. It was madness. It was mercy. Arya volunteered, had once killed the Night King. She could kill his heir, too. They armed her with dragon glass and a blade of Valyrian steel. No fire, no magic, just cold steel and quiet footsteps. As she slipped into the frost-covered halls of Winterfell, she passed bodies of the people she'd known. Guards, friends, even Gendry. All gone, and now only one name remained on her list: Jon Snow. She found him in the Godswood, standing before the old weirwood tree, as if seeking forgiveness from something long dead. His back was turned. She moved like a shadow. But he spoke before she reached him. "I knew it would be you." Arya froze. Her grip tightened. "You taught me to survive," she said, "but not like this." Jon turned slowly. His eyes, still blue, but softer now, haunted. "I don't want to fight you." "Then don't," she said. "Let me end this." "I wish I could." They stared at each other, brother and sister, but only one had come to bleed. Jon stepped forward. Arya raised the blade. But he didn't strike. Instead, he whispered, "Do it, before I forget who I am." Snow fell like ash over the Godswood. Arya Stark stood face to face with the boy she once called brother. Only now, he wasn't Jon Snow anymore. Not fully. There was still something human left in him, flickering under the ice like a dying flame. But it was faint, fading. He'd asked her to do it, to end it before he lost himself completely. But Arya had killed monsters. She had killed tyrants. She had never killed someone who asked to die. Her hand trembled, the dragon glass blade gripped tight. This was Jon. He had saved her. He had held her when their father was executed. He had protected her when the world turned dark. Could she really do it? Could she kill her own blood? Jon stepped forward. "I can feel him inside me," he said, voice cracked like ice breaking. "The Night King. He doesn't speak anymore. He just waits, like a storm growing in my head. One day I won't be able to stop him." Arya blinked away the tears. "Then fight him." "I did," Jon whispered, "and I lost." Behind them, the wind howled. The weirwood tree creaked like it was mourning. Arya lunged forward, blade raised. Jon didn't flinch, but at the last second she stopped, just inches from his heart. She looked into his eyes, and that's when she saw it. Not just regret, but resistance. Jon was still fighting. Somewhere deep inside he was pushing back. The Night King hadn't fully taken him. "Not yet," Arya pulled back. "No," she said. "You're still in there. I can't kill you." Jon's face twisted. Not in anger, but in fear. "You should have," he said, "because now it's too late." And then the cold struck, all at once. The entire godswood exploded into frost. The weirwood tree cracked down its center. The ground froze. The air turned black. The Night King had arrived, not walking, not flying, but through Jon. His spirit, his curse, his very presence surged forward like a scream no one could hear. Jon fell to his knees, clutching his chest, his mouth open in agony. Arya was thrown back, slammed into the roots of the tree. The Night King wasn't standing before them. He was inside Jon now, possessing him fully, and Jon was losing. The last flicker of light in his eyes began to fade, replaced by that same dead blue. And in that final moment, Arya made her choice. Not out of hate, not for revenge, but out of love. She ran to him, cradled him like the boy she once knew, and whispered, "I'm sorry." Then she drove the blade into his heart, not with fury, with mercy. Jon gasped. His hands gripped hers, not to stop her, but to hold on for one last moment. He looked into her eyes, really looked, and smiled. The blue vanished. For just a second, his eyes were brown again. He was Jon. And then, he was gone. The Night King screamed, not with sound, but with a shockwave of pure cold that shattered every frozen corpse across Winterfell. The dead fell like snow, crumbling into dust and ice. The sky cleared. The silence shattered. Winter was over. Hours passed. Arya sat alone beside Jon's body in the snow. The sun had broken through for the first time in weeks, bathing his pale face in light. The survivors emerged. Sansa, Davos, the last few who had hidden below. Daenerys was found half alive, her spirit shattered, but her fire returning slowly. Drogon, wounded but breathing, roared once more into the clean air. Arya didn't speak. She just buried him. Beneath the tree he had once prayed under. No king's tomb, no banners, just quiet. Sansa placed a single direwolf sigil at the foot of his grave. He saved us all. Davos nodded. Aye, in the end, he chose the living. Daenerys couldn't speak. She touched the grave once, then left without a word. Later, Arya stood at the gates, ready to leave Winterfell forever. Sansa hugged her tight. He would have been proud of you. Arya shook her head. No, he would have hated what I had to do. And then she rode off into the west, where no one knew her name, and far beyond the wall, deep in the untouched cold. A single snowflake landed on a black direwolf's paw. Ghost raised his head, howled once, and vanished into the storm, because legends never die. But peace sometimes comes at a terrible price.